Dipty's here with the papers. You're starting with Donald Trump's decision announced on Twitter to ban transgender soldiers from the military there.
That's right, a ban that came in 3 tweets actually on Twitter, which the conservative paper, The National Review, reminds us is not actually an executive order, so it can't really be enforced, or we actually don't know if it can be. This writer does weigh in sort of in favor of Trump's ban, arguing that by definition, transgender people are a population suffering a mental disconnect to their own bodies, I'm quoting there. Add to this the risks of suicide, drug use, and HIV/AIDS, and that's, I quote, a pretty big series of red flags. Ultimately, it's up to the military to decide if it warrants a ban or just warrants stricter rules about who can enter the army. Another conservative commentator in USA Today says the ban is unfair, but that it's correct because transgender people come with emotional issues that are difficult to solve, and the U.S. military, I quote, need to focus on defeating enemies, not restrooms and reassignment surgeries. So very biting words from the conservative commentators.
A lot of outrage about the decision, though.
That's right. This announcement has provoked a lot of outrage. Slate calls Trump's tweets abhorrent that play into false narratives long used to avoid or delay changes in the military, like integrating Black Americans to allowing women to fight on the front line. This decision will signal to many others that today's military is not the kind of employer that you want to be working for. Slate argues that this decision will ultimately weaken the military, which is already having trouble trying to recruit people. The street paper Metro, meanwhile, debunks Trump's claim that transgender troops would cost more in healthcare. Citing a military study, the paper says that the Department of Defense spends 5 times as much on Viagra and 10 times as much in treating erectile dysfunction among military men.
OK, well, let's move on to another story that we've covered quite a bit in the press review. We mentioned it earlier on the news as well, the fate of little Charlie Gard, the 11-month-old boy with a life-ending genetic condition.
That's right. And Charlie Gard's parents gave up their legal battle earlier this week, the battle to fly him to the U.S. for experimental treatment. Sadly, the little boy is due to be taken off life support this week. An end at last to the Charlie Gard case. That's what the British paper The Economist says, reminding us that it's a case that shed light on how countries deal with such terminal cases differently, like in Britain, where the courts could decide, to the U.S., where parents' wishes tend to reign above all.
Cases sparked a lot of emotion as well.
That's right. A lot of emotion in the worldwide press, really. Let's start with a South African paper. A rabbi has written an article in Pretoria News saying we all can learn something from the fight for Charlie Gard, that it takes, quote, emotional maturity to know when to let go. An Italian magazine, Grazia, also hails the courage of Charlie's parents. This writer actually has gone through the same thing, saying at least they can seek solace in knowing they did everything they could for their little boy.
Story from France now. Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte Macron, they met with Rihanna at the Élysée Palace yesterday.
That's right. Riri was at the Élysée yesterday to lobby Emmanuel Macron to contribute to her charity fund for education in the developing world. It wasn't all serious. They had some light moments, as she posted on her Instagram during the meeting. There were moments where they did laugh together and share jokes, presumably. But there you go. There you see it. There, a funny moment. But not everybody was amused. The British conservative magazine The Spectator reminds us that Macron has been slipping in popularity in recent months. Many voters are disillusioned with his plans for reforms and perhaps fed up of his omnipresence on the international stage. Macron, in this article, is likened to Tony Blair, who also tried to breathe life into Britain when he came to power. But unlike Blairism, Macron is not off to a flying start, and many have criticized his focus on courting pop stars like Rihanna and Bono yesterday on Tuesday, ahead of dealing with more important domestic issues.
We shall see how it goes over the coming months, of course. Now, finally, the new cover of Rolling Stone magazine. It's prompted some outrage from Canadians. Tell us why.
Well, Rolling Stone has put Justin Trudeau on its front cover with the headline, "Why can't he be our president?" And not all Canadians are amused. Trudeau's domestic rating, like Macron, is also falling, according to Huffington Post. Canadians are unhappy, for instance, with his stance on oil pipelines, his decision to scrap a key promise on electoral reform, and a settlement with a Canadian citizen suspected of terrorism. And it appears that Canadians, above all, are sick of Trudeau being reduced to a telegenic, progressive, charming leader, as he is in this article, as opposed to what some believe is a murkier political reality. Let's end with this tweet from one person who's definitely not charmed by Trudeau. He says he's exactly socks and selfies deep. If that's your dream leader, please take him. He's all yours. So clearly not everyone is charmed by those baby blue eyes.
Yeah, it was Rolling Stone magazine, not a political heavyweight.
That's right.
But anyway. All right, thanks, Dipti. Dipti with the papers on France 24.